Malaysia is a struggling economy drowning in debt. That's what I thought. That's what most people think. I mean, how could you not? Just a few years ago, this country was at the center of one of the world's biggest financial scandals. Billions of dollars stolen, a prime minister in jail, the entire nation looking like it was about to collapse. But here's what absolutely blew my mind. In 2024, while I was researching this video expecting to find economic disaster, I discovered something completely different. Microsoft just invested $2.2 billion. Google, $2 billion. Amazon, over $6 billion. Oracle, $6.5 billion. Wait, what? Let me take you back to 2015 because this is where the story gets absolutely insane. Malaysia had just become the center of what financial experts called kleptocracy at its worst. The 1MDB scandal, and trust me, this name is about to become important. Picture this. The government creates a development fund in 2009 called One Malaysia Development Berhad, 1MDB for short. The idea? Attract foreign investment, develop the economy, lift people out of poverty. Sounds noble, right? But here's where it gets wild. By 2015, investigators discovered that approximately $4.5 billion had been stolen from this fund. Not lost, not mismanaged, stolen. The money went everywhere: luxury real estate in New York, expensive artwork, private jets, and get this, it even helped finance the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. Yes, a movie about financial fraud was partially funded by actual financial fraud. You can't make this up. The debt? It ballooned to over 42 billion ringgit. That's about 12 billion US dollars. The former Prime Minister, Najib Razak, was eventually sentenced to 12 years in prison. Malaysia's credit rating got downgraded. Foreign investors fled. The country looked finished. So naturally, when I started researching Malaysia's economy in 2024, I expected to find a struggling nation still drowning in debt and corruption. But what I found instead changed everything I thought I knew. Here's the first number that stopped me in my tracks. Malaysia's economy grew by 5.1% in 2024. Now, you might be thinking, okay, 5%, is that good? Let me put this in perspective. The United States grew at around 2.5%. The European Union? Even less. Malaysia didn't just grow, it surged past major developed economies. And this wasn't a one-time fluke. In the first quarter alone, the economy expanded by 4.2%, exceeding every expert prediction. But wait, it gets better. Remember that massive debt from the 1MDB scandal? Malaysia has been quietly paying it down while simultaneously attracting the biggest tech investments in its history. How is this even possible? Here's where the story becomes absolutely fascinating. While the world was busy watching the US-China tech war heat up, Malaysia did something brilliant. Instead of picking sides, they said, "We're staying neutral, everyone is welcome." And tech giants noticed. In 2024 alone, Microsoft committed $2.2 billion, Google announced $2 billion, Amazon Web Services pledged $6.2 billion, Oracle joined with $6.5 billion, ByteDance invested $2.1 billion. We're talking about nearly $20 billion flooding into one country in a single year. But here's the question that kept me up at night. Why Malaysia? What do these companies see that most of us are missing? The answer is hiding in plain sight, and it's something most people have no idea about. Malaysia is the world's 6th largest exporter of semiconductors. Yeah, those tiny chips that power everything from your smartphone to AI systems to electric vehicles. In 2024, Malaysia exported over 600 billion ringgit worth of semiconductors. That's about 141 billion US dollars. But here's what makes this absolutely mind-blowing. Malaysia doesn't just assemble chips like many Asian countries. They're moving up the entire value chain. The government announced a national semiconductor strategy with a target that sounds impossible: attract over $100 billion in semiconductor investments. You might think, that's just talk, except it's already happening. Companies like NVIDIA are building a $4.3 billion AI data center. Intel and Infineon are expanding production. Texas Instruments is establishing new assembly plants. These aren't small pilot projects. These are massive, long-term commitments. And get this, Malaysia now handles approximately 10% of the world's semiconductor packaging operations. Think about that. One country controlling 10% of the global supply chain for the technology that powers our entire modern world. But semiconductors are just the beginning. The real story? Malaysia is positioning itself as Southeast Asia's AI hub. The government created a national AI office. They're investing 600 million ringgit in research and development. They're training thousands of new engineers. They're building data centers at a pace that rivals Singapore. Here's why this matters. Every major tech company needs three things for AI: massive computing power, reliable infrastructure, and a skilled workforce. Malaysia is building all three simultaneously. While everyone was distracted by the debt headlines, Malaysia was quietly constructing the infrastructure for the next technological revolution. Now you might be wondering, okay, but how did Malaysia go from massive corruption to attracting the world's biggest companies in less than a decade? This is where the story gets really interesting, because it required something rare in politics: actual reform. After the 1MDB scandal broke, something unprecedented happened in Malaysia's history. In 2018, the political party that had ruled for 60 years lost power. The new government, despite its own challenges, did something crucial. They passed the Public Finance and Fiscal Responsibility Act in 2023. This wasn't just another law. This was Malaysia basically saying to the world, we learned our lesson. Here's legal proof we won't let this happen again. But laws are meaningless without enforcement. So here's what actually happened. The government recovered about 29.7 billion ringgit from the 1MDB scandal through asset seizures, legal settlements, and international cooperation. That's real money coming back to pay real debts. They recovered funds from banks in Switzerland, Singapore, and the United States. They negotiated settlements with audit firms. They pursued legal cases across multiple jurisdictions. And the current Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim, a guy who literally went to prison fighting corruption decades ago, made economic transformation his personal mission. He's visited over 30 countries courting investors. He's repeatedly emphasized Malaysia's fiercely neutral stance in the US-China rivalry. The result? Foreign direct investment in 2023 hit a record $38.5 billion, a 15% increase from the previous year. But the real shock? The 2024 numbers are projected to be even higher. Let me share some numbers that don't get headlines but tell the real story. Unemployment in Malaysia dropped to 3.0% by March 2025, the lowest since 2015. Think about that. Lower unemployment than most developed nations. The labor force participation rate hit an all-time high of 70.7%. Inflation? Controlled at around 1.8% in 2024. While much of the world was struggling with soaring prices, Malaysia kept inflation lower than most developed economies. The Malaysian ringgit, which had weakened significantly, appreciated 16.5% against the US dollar between February and September 2024. That's not a typo. 16.5% in 7 months. Malaysia's digital economy is projected to contribute 25.5% to GDP by the end of 2025. That's a quarter of the entire economy from tech and digital services. But here's what really amazed me. Malaysia is doing all of this while still paying down the 1MDB debt. The government has already repaid 13.3 billion ringgit. They're not kicking the can down the road, they're actually solving the problem. And get this, the fiscal deficit dropped from 5.0% of GDP in 2023 to 4.1% in 2024. The government is spending less than it earns, even while investing heavily in infrastructure and technology. The International Monetary Fund, the same organization that usually tells countries to tighten their belts, praised Malaysia's economic management. The OECD ranked Malaysia 23rd in global competitiveness and 2nd in Southeast Asia after Singapore. The Global Innovation Index placed Malaysia 33rd globally, ahead of countries like Slovenia, Hungary, and Qatar. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They represent real transformation happening in real time. But here's what I think is the most genius part of Malaysia's strategy, and it's something that took me a while to fully appreciate. While the world is divided, Malaysia is connected. Think about it. China and the United States are locked in a technological Cold War. Companies are desperate to diversify away from China but can't afford to completely abandon the region. They need skilled workers, they need infrastructure, they need political stability, and they need someone who won't force them to choose sides. Malaysia walked into this situation and said, "We'll take investment from everyone." The result? China is their second-largest trading partner. The United States is investing billions. European companies are setting up shop. Japanese and Korean firms are expanding. Everyone is welcome. This isn't fence-sitting, it's strategic positioning. Malaysia recognized that in a divided world, the bridge builders win. And they're using this moment perfectly. They're not just accepting foreign investment, they're leveraging it to build domestic capabilities. The government signed a $250 million agreement with ARM Holdings, giving Malaysian companies access to cutting-edge chip design technology. The goal? Develop homegrown chips within a decade. They're creating AI research centers, training tens of thousands of engineers, building world-class data centers, and establishing themselves as a critical node in the global tech supply chain. Here's what blew my mind. A company called Skychip just launched the Mars 1000, Malaysia's first locally designed and developed edge AI processor. This isn't just assembly work anymore. Malaysia is actually designing chips now. The transformation from scandal-ridden debt disaster to tech innovation hub happened in less than a decade. That's remarkable. Now let me be clear. This isn't a fairy tale. Malaysia still faces serious challenges. The 1MDB debt isn't fully resolved. As of late 2024, about 38.81 billion ringgit in debt remains. The government is making payments, but this burden will continue for years. There are concerns about subsidy reforms. The government is removing fuel subsidies to save money and improve efficiency, but this affects everyday Malaysians who are already dealing with cost of living pressures. Malaysia also faces the middle income trap, that challenge where countries develop to a certain point but struggle to make the jump to high income status. Despite all the progress, Malaysia's GDP per capita is still significantly lower than Singapore or developed nations. Labor challenges exist too. The semiconductor and AI industries need highly skilled engineers, and Malaysia is racing to train enough people to meet demand. There's also the persistent issue of brain drain, talented Malaysians leaving for opportunities abroad. And let's not forget, global economic uncertainty, potential U.S. tariffs, and geopolitical tensions could all impact Malaysia's strategy. The government is making bold bets on technology and neutrality, but the world stage is unpredictable. But here's why Malaysia's story matters beyond just one country's economic recovery. It proves that nations can bounce back from catastrophic failures. Just 7 years ago, Malaysia was the poster child for corruption and financial mismanagement. Today, it's attracting record investment and being praised by international institutions. It shows that strategic positioning beats picking sides. In our polarized world, Malaysia's success demonstrates that neutrality, when executed with clear economic strategy, can be incredibly valuable. It reveals that the real battles of the 21st century will be fought over semiconductors, AI, and data, not just traditional resources. Malaysia understood this early and positioned accordingly. And perhaps most importantly, it demonstrates that reform and transparency actually matter. The investments flooding into Malaysia aren't just about cheap labor or tax breaks, they're about trust. Companies are investing because they believe Malaysia has learned from its mistakes and built stronger institutions. The IMF projected Malaysia's economy will grow 4.7% in 2025, moderating slightly from 2024 but still outpacing most developed economies. The trajectory is clear. Malaysia is on track to potentially achieve high-income status by 2030. Think about that. A country that was mired in scandal in 2015 could become a developed nation by 2030. That's a 15-year transformation from crisis to prosperity. So when I started researching this video, I thought I was going to tell you about a country struggling with corruption and debt. Instead, I discovered one of the most remarkable economic transformations of our time. Malaysia's story teaches us that past failures don't determine future success. Strategic neutrality can be more valuable than alliance technology, and innovation can transform entire economies. Transparency and reform, while painful, create real value. The world is changing faster than most people realize. The next time you hear someone say Malaysia is broke or struggling, show them the numbers. Show them the 20 billion in tech investments. Show them the 5.1% economic growth. Show them the semiconductor exports and AI initiatives. Malaysia isn't perfect. The journey isn't complete. Challenges remain. But this country has quietly become one of the most interesting economic stories of the decade, a transformation so dramatic that most people still don't even know it's happening. I thought Malaysia was broke. I was so wrong. And discovering just how wrong I was taught me something valuable. Our assumptions about countries, especially those we don't follow closely, can be wildly outdated. The world is changing. Malaysia is proof. And if you're not paying attention, you might miss the next big transformation happening right under your nose. What do you think? Did Malaysia's transformation surprise you as much as it surprised me? Do you think they can maintain this momentum? Let me know in the comments. And if you learned something new today, hit that subscribe button because we're diving into more economic stories the mainstream media isn't telling you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.